Alright, back for match 1. We are on the draw. Hand's a little bit on the slow side, but has enough interaction to probably buy us time to get to fires. Although this Spikefield Hazard is probably going to have to be played as a tap land. Okay, so Humans. Let's go ahead and play that out. I hope they don't have like Thalia to follow up. Mark Aspirant. Just pass here. It does get the blank R. Alright, well that is the worst possible scenario, I guess. Okay, that works out quite nicely, actually. Bonecrusher. They have a Brokathar or something. Obviously, we get blown out a little bit here, but it's either that or Mogis, and I think Mogis might be important to finish off the game. So, opponent with a Thalia's Lieutenant, sure. It's actually going to attack. And they must have Brave, right? Yep, hard to beat the double Brave the Elements draw. So we have a bunch of possible cards for this matchup. Tend to like to go down Fanatic of Mogis, even though I can crew the Sky Sovereign. Cavalier. Chandra. Go with a 61 card special, I guess. Alright, no red sources, we have to pitch this one. His hands are right, probably put back. Let's pass turn. Spyron's gotta die. Okay. Opponent will have to fire up both Mutavaults to kill Chandra here. No reason to block. Okay, let's get a lot of lands. Pumpkin seeds, nice. Got Chandra in this matchup. Obviously it's very slow, but the more sweepers we have access to, the better it feels. Got the acceleration package, we got fires, so, or Anger of the Gods, I mean, so. And our opponent leads on nothing. So we get to deploy this. Get the mountain into our deck, draw a card. Fires of Invention, not terrible. Opponent plays a Redain. So fire up a Mutable, play a... Nope. Opponent plays nothing. Feels like they're holding up a removal spell, so we'll play our worst creature here. Just have nothing. Wow. What is going on with our hand? Okay, that makes a bit more sense now, I suppose. And opponent concedes. Nice. Alright, back for match 2. We're on the play. Interesting hand. I guess we keep it, but man, is it questionable. So looks like we're up against Rakdos, Croxa, play all hand out, draw a card. Sweltering Suns is medium against them. Hopefully they don't just slam shoulder it here. Of course they do. Could try to stay back and block here, but that's not really favorable to us. Possible I was supposed to play this or a Fanatic of Mogis. And we're just dead. Okay. Shieldred continues to be a problem because of its stats. Well, actually I want an Obliterating Bolt. Hand's fine. Alright, that was one of the better draws in our deck. I'll have to take what? Anger of the Gods? Or maybe have a second Thought Seize and just take... the land. Runs out, let me guess, another Shielder. Nope, Graveyard Trespasser. Interesting. Which was a power word kill. Awkward. Okay. I should probably easily have a removal spell here, right? Well, I guess that's one way to lose, huh? That's such a good opener, and now we've just drawn land after land after land after land after land. It happens sometimes. And Shieldred's probably the biggest problem in the Rakdos matchup. Alright, we're back for match number 3. I have one of our better openers with Cleansing Fire into Darksteel Citadel, so definitely, and we're keeping blue-white X control. And we still got a jam. Gets to do nothing with their mana. I mean, they might get to cycle a Shark Typhoon here, I guess. Yep. Four, five, six, seven. So I still can't double spell here. I think we'll run out fires because we don't actually care at this point if it gets countered. Yeah, like opponent's obliged to counter it, but we really don't care about it. Just to potentially untap with another absorb or something, but play a Chandra. Opponent likely still has a sensor in hand because of that stick. Good to know about. Line bonding, I guess that works too. Four, five, six, seven, eight. Probably gonna run face first into a Wandering Emperor, but yep. Blue-white boredom it is. So part of the reason we have the Chandras and the Pithing Needles We definitely don't want these Sweltering Suns or these Strangles. Rest of the cards, like a Fry makes some sense, but I don't really think we want to fight on that axis. The rest of the cards are just what they're there for. Blue-white definitely feels like one of the more difficult matchups. When you're playing red mid-range, like, obviously things with certain toughness become a problem. So, you know, shouldered out of Rakdos. You know, cards like Cavalier of Thorns are annoying to deal with because they require multiple forms of damage, whether it be Chandra plus Glorybringer, or Chandra plus, you know, kill spell, you know, Sweeper plus a removal spell. You know, so Mono Green and Rakdos both have their pressure points in the matchup, though you can just race them or out-resource them. Blue-white is just like, you have to have like the nutty opener because you don't have a ton of early plays, obviously. You know, you don't have, you know, an impactful 2-drop or anything. Like, this hand is fine, but, you know, they're going to have their counters up. I think you keep it because of Chandra, but, you know, they can still outpower Chandra because they bring in things like Lyra and such, so. Obviously, if we draw Cleansing Wildfire, we're very happy, but. So now we have a choice to make with Pithing Needle. You either name the Wandering Emperor or Teferi. I think we name Teferi. Not that they don't have answers to this. Obviously, they have Leyline Binding. They have etc. So I think we just start jamming. Hopefully they don't have Censor, but they have Dovin's Veto, which is okay, I guess. Just play nothing here. They don't get to use their mana, which I'm perfectly fine with. So this is the kind of point in time where you want to force them to have interaction because they're obviously intending to cast Memory Deluge. I think we'll leave it on top. I think it's a fine card to force them to counter again. Deciding if they want to play out Teferi, most likely. Do you have another Aether Gust? We legitimately don't care about this Fires of Invention at this point. It'd be nice if it resolved, but it just doesn't do anything. Okay. good chance we're walking right into a... Oh, no wonder number. Interesting. Alright, somehow we chipped away enough to kill them. But now we gotta win game 3 on the draw. I still don't really like Fry. I mean, Answer's Planeswalkers, but in this matchup we are the aggressor, so you need all your threats. Pithing Needle is kind of designed to be that flex spot that Fry might occupy. It kind of preemptively deals with a lot of annoying things, like some of the vehicles out of Greasefang, some of the vehicles out, or some of the Planeswalkers out of various different decks, etc. It's something I really picked up when I played a lot of Rakdos, just the utility that Pithing Needle really brings. I just don't think this hand does enough. It needs to hit too many land drops, and it doesn't have anything going on. Alright, I guess we're going to 5, question mark? Or can we risk keeping this hand? 1, 2... I guess we'll try it, put back... Fires. Because Fires is really the do-nothing card in this hand. Opponent also mulligan into 5. Alright. Interesting. Which one do I need? Alright, we still need to draw a land. Which I guess we kind of do. Problem is we don't know if that's a Saw It Coming or Behold the Multiverse, so... Obviously, this is risky playing it into a Censor or something, but... I actually had to use a hard counter here. I don't think this is going to resolve, but we have to try for it. Yep, I saw it coming, sure. Feels like our opponent has Leyline Binding, so we just gotta keep the pressure on. I'm perfectly happy if they Leyline Binding this, if we're being honest. Obviously they could have Verdict or something along those lines. It's one last binding going after Pithing Needle, one last binding going after Chandra, etc. So, speaking of Chandra, we just jam. Leyline Binding, presumably. Nope, the Wandering Emperor. Okay. Slayer. Interesting. All right, so oh, it has protection from dragons. Wonderful. Forgot about that point of text. Yes. So now we lose. Alright, I think that's enough for some solid data on Mono Red. Alright, back with a quick deck tech / wrap up for Mono Red. We played obviously 2 weeks in a row. Last week's list was, well, it was a trash heap. Had too few lands. The card package is fine, but really Mono Red's not the deck to really take advantage of it. I played a lot more Mono Red going through this week. Obviously, I don't have currently the wild cards for Thought-Knot, Zero, or Fanatic of Mogis, so obviously that can swing from things a little bit. But as far as the deck overall, the things I've learned, you definitely want the 8 Cascading Cataracts, Darksteel Citadel, because that opens up simply the best opening with the deck, which is turn 2 Cleansing Wildfire, targeting your own land, ramping to 3, drawing a card. You know, when you have that opener, this deck feels very competitive, very powerful. Otherwise, when you try to play a more fair game of Magic, when you're just playing, say Strangle or whatever, Bonecrusher Giant Stomp on 2, 3, 4, and you just try to play this kind of like fair game. Obviously, you can. That's obviously helped a lot by Fires of Invention, but really not the best opening unless you have that opening and you can go Fires on 3 and just kind of go nuts from there. This deck is very capable of snowballing a lot of damage. You have Cavalier of Flame. Especially on 5 if you have Fires of Invention. You have Glorybringer with haste to force your opponent's things. Fanatic of Mogis, especially if you get a Fable of the Mirror Breaker / Reflection of Kijiki going. This can do a lot of damage on its own without even attacking into things like the Wandering Emperor. But the rest of the deck, Strangle, efficient removal, the land base and all that's fine. The deck is fine. Like, if you look at its matchup spread, it's got an okay Rakdos matchup. It's probably a little bit of a dog to mono green. I played against a variant of Phoenix once. It didn't feel like a particularly good matchup. Once again, Phoenix isn't quite a full experience on Explorer, so it's kind of hard to narrow down how that matchup is. The Humans matchup feels pretty good. Any type of creature mid-range deck that's not green-based feels pretty reasonable. The biggest problem with the deck is early pressure and interaction above X4. Anything above Old Grove Trolls are difficult to kill. Shieldreds, Baneslayer Angels, etc. Now, there isn't a ton of those things in the format, but that's one of the downsides of Red and its damage-based removal is you just don't have the ability to answer all those things cleanly. So, that kind of highlighted one of the problems of these decks. Another problem we noticed last week, in addition to the low land count that particular deck had, was the fact of counterspells. Saw It Coming, Dovin's Veto, absorb, you know, all the counter spells out of spirits, etc. You know, this deck is very much a fires deck. It has that inherent weakness to tempo, and you can only do so much. As far as the list I've been running, it feels like we have almost too many cards to bring in against aggro. It feels like, you know, these Sky Sovereigns plus all these removal spells and sweepers, like I'm really struggling to, you know, cut enough cards to bring, you know, maybe Fanatic of Mogis I'm cutting, and some, like, maybe sometimes occasionally Chandra, because it can be very hard for the deck to, you know, deal with a ton of swarm of creatures to protect Chandra sometimes. It just becomes a 4-mana removal spell, then we don't have enough cards to kind of bring in Sky Sovereigns. So maybe I can shave on some of those. Unlicensed Hearse and Pithing Needle are kind of working overtime against decks like Greasefang and Phoenix. Obviously Hearse, very good against Phoenix and Abzan. Pithing Needle, you know, we saw it a lot. It comes in against a lot of different matchups just as a random catch-all. You know, nice against things like the Wandering Emperor, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, Liliana of the Veil, various vehicles, etc. So I wouldn't necessarily leave home without these. The Chandras, they're fine. Like, the problem with, like, blue-white control in the post-board games is they're bringing in things like Lyra, they're bringing in Baneslayer Angel, they're bringing in all of these different things, and I didn't remember the text on Baneslayer that says not only protection from demons, but also protection from dragons. Kind of makes my Glorybringer look a little bit embarrassing. But the deck overall, fairly solid against board-based decks. You have some weaknesses against some X5s, kind of to be expected. You have these games, these insane games with Cleansing Wildfire and these guys that give you incredible openings, but the deck lacks consistency. You know, you don't have a ton of great recovery mechanics. You know, decks like the Karuga Fires or some of those have a little bit better in terms of catch-up mechanics, like things like Temporary Lockdown, you know, the various things out of Enigmatic Fires. Those decks have a little bit better catch-up mechanics, and they have a little bit more of a smattering of stuff to do in the early game. This deck is very much, you know, interact on 1 or 2 with some removal spells, turn 3, Fable the Mirror Breaker, turn 4, hope to continue to cast all the way up. So you're in this weird situation where you have to have this right mix of lands, spells, and your spells have to be impactful and close out the game. And this deck doesn't always do that well. So it has some... It's kind of funny, when I wasn't recording the chunk, but like this week in between, I've had this one run where I think I went like 7 or 8 matches in a row. It was a lot of like Rakdos and humans and just these like board-centric elves. Just these decks that are just like very good at like deploying a bunch of threats. And this deck feels like very good at answering those. It struggles with the spirits, the blue-white controls, you know, those kind of like counterspell based decks, and can also struggle against specific subset of cards like Cavalier of Flame, Shieldred, etc. So a little bit of better play on my part. We might have been able to pull out a 2-1 here, especially if I didn't run smack first into Baneslayer Angel there in game 3. But, you know, it is a card that I cautioned about. One reason I probably should have remembered to bring in Fry. I'm not entirely sure what I've cut, maybe like a Fanatic of Mogis or 2, as that card is a little bit underwhelming, especially against a deck that's like really not wanting to leave you with a board presence anyway. So maybe I was supposed to cut out Fanatic of Mogis or 2 to bring in Fry. Yeah, so. But the deck is reasonable. It's not tier 1 for a reason, but it's still a deck that you can see some play, and a deck you should have some familiarity with. And it can be a fun, off-the-beat thing that sometimes can do very, very well. So, this has been John for Arena Nexus MTG. Hope to see you next week when we should be starting to get into All Will Be One content, I believe, will be coming out at that point. So, hope to see you then.